Welcome. And if you're Gen Z, special welcome. My name's Kim. I practice East Asian medicine and Taoism. One of the unique things about Taoism is understanding where you are and the energetics of the world. So, understanding where you are in the energetics of the world. And the thought is, if you know yourself and understand where you are, then you're going to be able to figure out how you can still be yourself while you're floating down the river. Because life isn't always a smooth sail, and sometimes it's going to get really turbulent. It can get easy to lose yourself in turbulence and get confused and to start taking blame for everything. This episode is really to kind of help you understand what the stream is looking like for this next year so that you can, take full advantage of it, because this is a really important year for you. For everybody else that doesn't know your generation, I'm going to just explain some of the things that are really unique and really positive about your generation. But I also want to kind of highlight that part of the reason why so many of us are finally able to feel the energetics change in the world is because of your generation. There's enough of you coming in, and it's not just you by yourself, for sure. There's some things that happened with COVID that moved a whole bunch of people over. And so that brought so much more energy into what your generation is going to try and accomplish. What's so unique about Gen Z? Gen Z, they're this wood generation. Wood knows what right from wrong. Oh my goodness, these guys know right from wrong. And they're the ones that are going to stand up for right, even against all odds. They will always stand up for right. They have no fear of standing up for what's right. And part of that is because wood, that element, is the general. And the general is about protecting society. And it's about setting out and putting up the defenses and fighting for what's right. So you're just doing what you're naturally inclined to do. Now, the other thing that's really going to be unique about this wood generation is they actually know right from wrong. No one has to tell them. They know it. And this is throughout the whole generation, which will lead to another interesting characteristic about this generation. So not only do you know right for wrong, you actually see people for who they are, and you can accept that, which is probably one of the most amazing things, because many other generations can't accept some of the things that they see in other people. But your generation has this really unique capability of seeing people for who they are, understanding their faults, and accepting that. You also are really good at not seeing differences. So, race, religion, sexual preference, all those things, that they're not important. And so they're not part of your judgment. Now, there's one thing that's really unique, is that being that you're the woods general, you guys are really independent, but it's not this independence where you have to go it alone. You're really independent in that you know who you are, and you stand for yourself, and you stand for what's right from wrong, but you also want to work with each other, and you naturally work with each other. It's very interesting. So one of the things that I've seen in this generation that just amazes me is when put into conflict, especially on issues of right from wrong, your generation will flock together behind what's right. You will flock together like birds, and you will stand and fight together, which is amazing, because you're absolutely the only generation so far that I've seen that is willing to do that. Okay. Are you ready to talk about this year? Because I think this year is going to be so important for you. And I think it's going to be a great year for you too, or at least it has this potential to be a great year for you. So remember, there's three key themes this year: humanity, that fits with you, and action and participation. And all those themes fit with who you are as a wood generation. If you want to know more about those themes and you know what the nitty gritty is, check out the episode Cracking the Code here on the channel. And that goes into depth on what those themes are. Let's talk about Taoism, okay? And in Taoism, there's always trilogies. So when we're talking about life, there's in general three phases. And the first phase is learning about who you are. And right now, that phase goes to about 12 to 15. And then the second phase is about understanding how to work with other people. So you know who you are. And then the second phase is about understanding, interacting with other people. And when you interact with other people, then you're going to learn more about your behaviors and about yourself as you're interacting with other people. And this next phase is about learning how to work with other people so that you can manifest your destiny. Taoism, I say, well, Taoism, they help us learn about the energetics of the world so that if we're in these energetics, we can understand that maybe it's not about us. Maybe we don't take on all the baggage that's happening around us. Maybe we say, okay, this is who I am. Right now, these energetics are crap. So instead of saying, I did something wrong, or I'm bad, or I'm not worthy, maybe I say, crappy energetics. I'm just going to take a pause here, breathe, and get ready to try again. So I think part of this is this complex dance of learning to work with other people and then figuring out how you fit into that and how you keep yourself when you're working with other people. It's easy to keep yourself when the river's nice and calm, but when it gets a little bit rocky and rapids, then it's really important to kind of figure out how to not take on everybody's crap. Now, there's one other part of this that I wanted to talk about too when you're working with other people, just to think about. Because as a generation, you're really, oh my gosh, you guys are amazing with working with your own generation and people around your own age. And it's when you get outside your age range that becomes more difficult, because that's where a lot of the issues of confrontation and differences come into play, which is natural. Yet here's the thing. There's not going to be another generation out there that is going to have the benefit that the boomer generation had. Now, the boomer generation had this explosion in population. So they never had to work with another generation, and they didn't. I mean, they have been in power since I was in high school. So they've been in power for decades. And there's generations that have just been completely washed over. So right now, as a society, our society is incredibly out of balance. And you can see that if you just look at who's in our Senate, who's in our House. I mean, it's hugely disproportionately to the boomer generation. There's almost nobody from any of the younger generations in there. So that's just in government, but you see that also in corporate America. You see that pretty much wherever you go. That generation could do that because there are so many of them. No other generation is going to have that. So you're not going to have that. Even though these people are really frustrating to work with, and it'll be every generation, they're all going to be frustrating to work with. especially because you have so much to do and you can't understand why they don't see that that's such a huge problem right now, especially since the problem's so obvious. But that's probably this year is going to be a good year to think about that, because here's the other thing that's interesting about the wood generation. The one skill set that they're maybe not so good at is patience. And so if you're really good at working with your own generation, and the problem is your generation's not big enough, so it's going to have to work with other generations, well, if they frustrate you and you're impatient, that can lead to conflict that doesn't benefit anybody. So here's what I want to think about. I'm going to talk to you about your breath, because this might be something that you can use through this next year when things get frustrating, when they get fearful, when they get anxious, to help you release that emotion so that you can see options. When we get trapped in emotion like anger, anxiety, frustration, fear, we, for some weird reason, we get this tunnel vision and we can't see options or opportunity. So I want to talk to you about breath, because that might give you an opportunity to see options. The lungs in Chinese medicine have a lot of symbolism to them. One of the symbolisms is the spirit that owns the lungs is called Po, and that is about our physical manifestation. So the lungs are about our life here on earth, which that to me was kind of interesting when you think that the lungs are the way that we take air into the body. So we take in air, which is considered heaven. We take in heaven into the body to manifest on earth. You notice when you're short of breath, you have a hard time moving. When you have a lot of breath, you can move easily. So there's this huge symbolism around the lungs on how it represents our physical being here on earth. Okay. And then there's this other aspect of the lungs, that it is the one aspect or the one organ that's controlled by the mind. So our mind can actually control our breath, right? I can go, oh, I'm going to hold my breath. And I hold my breath. So our mind, we can control our breath. I can't really do that with my heart. I'm like, I'm going to keep on beating. I'm going to keep on beating. You know, we don't ever want to go, I'm going to hold my heartbeat and see what happens. And we don't want to do that with the spleen either, or with the liver. We don't want to do that with any of the other organs, but we can do that with the lungs. We can control how it interacts with the world, which is kind of interesting. In Chinese medicine, there's 5 elements. You know, there's fire, earth, metal, water, wood. There's 5 elements, and they have all these different relations with each other. And those relations is how it keeps everything in balance. Well, one of the relationships is called a controlling relationship. So each element controls one other element. The heart controls the lungs. And we can see that. We can see that okay, so why does that make sense? Because the heart also controls the mind. So we can see that we can tell ourselves to breathe deep, breathe shallow, or hold your breath. We can do that. And that's the mind related to the heart, controlling the lungs. Okay. Here's the interesting thing about the lungs, though. The lungs can overrule all the emotions. So in Chinese medicine, they say every organ has an emotion. So we have 5 elements, right? We have the fire, earth, metal, water, wood. And each one of those elements is related to an organ. And each one of those organs, when it's out of balance, it actually encourages an emotion in the body. So wood out of balance is anger, frustration, resentment. kidneys out of balance is fear, shock. Uh, li- uh, Metal out of balance is going to be grief, sadness. So each one of these organs, when they're out of balance, they get excessive in those emotions. The neat thing about the lungs, it can overrule any one of those emotions. So it can say, yeah, I'm not going to do that. And how does it do that? You do that by changing your breath. So just in your everyday life, as you go through the day and you notice you're going through different emotions like fear, anxiety, resentment, notice how your breath changes. Notice how your body feels. And everything responds to that emotion. If you change your breath, you're going to change the whole response. And when you change the whole response, the emotion changes. So the emotion isn't the driver, it's the result. And so when you use your breath to change how you're breathing, you change your driver and the driver changes the result. Okay. So as you're going through this year, you want to learn as much as you can about working with other people and learning how to do that effectively so that you can later on manifest your destiny. And when you do that, it's going to be natural that people are going to bring up uncomfortable emotions for you, whether it's anger, whether it's anxiety, whether it's fear. They're going to bring these emotions up in you. And when they bring these emotions up in you, what makes it really tough is the driver brings the result of the emotion. So let's say it's fear. And when we're fearful, that also encourages a result in our mind. It narrows our focus in our mind, and we can only see one path. For some reason, every time we get too locked in emotion, we only have one path. So one of the things I'm going to suggest is maybe picking up some different breathing exercises that can address the different emotions like anxiety, fear, resentment, anger, and learn some different breathing techniques that can change, that can drive a different result. Because as soon as you change your breath, you're going to drive a different result, and that different result is going to change your emotions. If you go to something that's more relaxed, you're going to be able to see more options. The road widens. Does that make sense? So this is an awesome year for you to be reaching out and learning to work with other people. And people are frustrating. I just got to tell you that they just don't follow your playbook. So when they don't follow your playbook, one of the things is, instead of letting your response drive your end reaction, change your breath and see if that changes something for you. It will change your end response. And if you can change your end response, you can see more options. And whenever you're dealing with things that cause you fear, anxiety, frustration, you want more options, because if you're feeling that emotion, you usually have trained yourself to that emotion because your exit door has always been blocked. Okay. So you want a wider, you want more options so that you have more exit doors and you can hopefully pick a different one. Does that make sense? Okay. If you want some ideas on, what kind of breathing things can I do to change this, just query breath on this channel. There's a number of episodes that I have out there that talk about the different types of breath that you can use for different emotions. There's one last thing that I'm just going to talk about. And, I feel more like I'm doing a political service message, but your generation is hitting a real interesting time where there are a lot of doors that are opening to you. We have all these doors that we open up as as we get older. 16, you can drive a car, 21, you can drink, 18, you have voting rights. So most of your generation is hitting this age where you can vote. And I think it's amazing that when I listen to the political commentary, they are not considering this younger generation as a serious concern in politics. And I kind of think you guys are, but that's just me. So I would suggest register to vote and vote. But here's the thing, this year it's about learning to participate and action. So if there is something that you're thinking, I would like to see that changed, why don't you think about going and talking to your county auditor about how you can get a measure put on the ballot? And then get some of your friends and work to get that measure put on the ballot. And then share that with more of your friends and make sure that they all register to vote. Because here's the thing, in my place, in my city, only a third of the people who are registered to vote. So real low turnout. Nobody participates whatsoever. It does not take much for you to change the scales. Now, I'm not saying that you're going to get success with every one of these, but I am saying that you're going to learn how to work within the system, and you're going to learn how to work with people, and you're going to learn how to do something that that moves in a direction that you want to go towards. Okay, so, and I think by doing that, you're fitting with inside the themes of this year, and because you're fitting with inside the themes of this year, things should really start working for you. The last decade has just been really chaotic, and it's been filled with a lot of roadblocks and a lot of things being put in our way. Those energetics are changing right now. And part of that is the shift in dynamics to this younger generation. More of the older generation is passing. And as that wave continues to wash through society, we're going to see more and more changes. And it's up to you to decide how that change is going to move forward. Just my thoughts. Okay, until next time, I'll catch you on the other side.